What it do, y'all? Your boy is back on his grind one more time, and I wanted to elaborate on the whole dash setup that I'm gonna be doing, the dash swap. So if you saw my previous video, I briefly talked about some junkyard pickups that I got, and what I've been trying to do for a long time is find one of these dashes. They came in the S10 Blazer and the Oldsmobile Bravada. I believe the years are 1989 to 94. Now they came out with two style dashes that are pretty much exactly the same. However, they are a little bit different as far as just some minor small details. So the tack for the later year models, like 92 and up or something like that, it had a 6500 tack and the 89, 90, and I think 91. I could be wrong on that, but I know like the earlier year models were only had like a 5500 RPM tack. And also the trip was a little was operated a little bit different. I think the trip on the earlier models needed a hot feed the whole time in order for it to work correctly, and I think they eliminated that in the later year models. But in any case, they all basically acted exactly the same. So I have one of them apart now. I got two from the junkyard. I scored at the junkyard. I've been trying to find these for a long time. Finally found them, man. And I wasn't even looking. I was actually going for something else at the junkyard and ended up coming across these. Came across one, I was like, oh man, I gotta snag it. And then there was another S10 Blazer. A couple cars down, looked at it, and it had that one in it too. And the cool thing is this one here is from a 92 model, and the other one here is from other one that I have is from an 89 model. And so I got both one of each model, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, I wanted to talk about this one in particular. So the other one, everything works on it. This one, the speedometer and the odometer did not work. There is ways that you can service this yourself versus sending it in. I don't know how much it costs to send it in, but obviously everything costs money. If you wanna buy these used or in, used good condition on eBay, they're selling for like 300 bucks or more. It's a deal if you can find them for around 200. I've seen them online for 400. I don't know who's paying that much money, but I mean, if you're gonna spend that much money, you might as well go like a decoder or something to spend a little bit more. However, this is actually really cool dash, y'all. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about it here. So if you're gonna do this dash swap, I would suggest taking this because you're gonna need it. Otherwise, you're gonna have to try to find it and get as much wiring of it as you can. Now, there is a schematic online, a few different schematics actually. There's actually a really good write-up somebody wrote in Oregon a long time ago in regards to swapping this from like S10 to S10 or S10 to Blazer or Oldsmobile Bravada to a Blazer or something like that, because these dashes only came with the 4.3 liter engine and also the Vortec model as well too. So a lot of them didn't come with the digital dash. They came with the analog, similar to like the Turbo Regals. They came with a digital and an analog. So a lot of a good popular upgrade between those three models is the digital dash upgrade. And so there's a write-up on that. There's also a write-up on the Turbo Buick site that I found because this isn't a popular upgrade. It hasn't been done too much as far as what I know, but there is a guy in the Turbo Buick community that did this swap and did like a really detailed description on what he did. It was done about 5 or 6 years ago, so the pictures that he had uploaded are no longer there. So that kind of sucks, but at least the steps of what he did are there. So anyways, you want to get the pigtail. So as you see, I have 1992 model. I wrote that on there. And then this is I'm not even sure if this is technically the motherboard. I'm not really sure what they call it, but on the back of this board, there is the power supply. And that's, I guess, is the culprit of it all. So in order to take this off, there's a few little bolts that you took off, already took them off. Then it's also attached here is where you have a few buttons for like your trip and all that stuff. And then there's these ribbon connectors here that you have to unplug before you can actually take them off. Obviously you got your light bulbs there, and the motherboard connections are right here. And if you guys can see how my solders here are bigger. I've already done this board already. And I resoldered them there. So if I flip this over, this is where kind of the brains are of them all. This is your power supply right here. And this is basically the culprit that goes bad. And I guess what it is over time, just the soldering connections actually just get weak. And when they get weak, then they don't make a good connection. And so what people will do is they'll actually take this board off, and it's a little bit of work to take that off because they're all soldered in to the board. But what people do is take it off and they reflow all the solder. So reflowing, the best thing that I can do is kind of show you a picture. So I got this picture online. This is actually from a V8 S10 website where somebody kind of walks through the steps of doing this particular exact particular thing that I'm talking about. But if you can see how all those solders there are a lot thicker and some of them are connected to each other, that's basically what they're talking about, is reflowing all the solders and kind of re-establishing good connections from them all on the power supply. Typically they would look something kind of like this here. So you see how kind of like all the solders are just kind of nice, neat, small, and then, you know, kind of how they look versus something like what I did here. They're a lot bigger, or here you can kind of see how they're really a lot thicker, a lot more sturdy and everything. So that's kind of what they call for. And 99% of the time, this works, and this is what corrects a lot of the digital part of the screen not working. This actually fixes it. So it's a little bit of a process to kind of get it off. What you have to do is what I did is took my soldering iron and kind of heated that all up and got them all loose. And I've never actually done this before, but a write-up, actually this particular write-up said you'd have to have a solder sucker, and I've never even heard of this before. But what it is exactly what it's called. It's like a cylinder that sucks up solder, and you set it here. Then there's a button here that you push, and when you heat the solder up, you put this right next to the melted solder and go, and it basically sucks up the solder out of the location where it's at. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but it worked actually really well. And so what I did is I kind of went through the line. It's pretty time consuming, but it actually works. And I basically took as much solder off all those connections there. And then once I got as much as I could off, I just took a little screwdriver, and then I started to kind of pry under here and just work my way around. And if one wouldn't budge, then I'd go back and with the soldering gun and kind of loosen that solder up, suck it out, and then kind of just keep working. Finally, it came out, and then it looked, you know, like this here, if you guys can see. So see those little needle-like things there? That's basically what you're prying out of this board. And this is the back of the board power supply here, and then this is what it looks like after you're done soldering them all together. So I did that, and I also did it back here too, just to kind of give it a little bit more rigidity and better connection. And then I installed it back in, and on this particular one, like I said, the speedometer and the odometer was not working. The center part right here, so where the numbers are, where it says 188, and then the odometer down here, this center portion was not working. However, everything else lit up. As soon as I redid and reflowed that power supply, everything lit back up and everything working perfectly. And it worked great, y'all. So when I put it back together, I'll turn it on so you guys can kind of see. So this is what I'm talking about here. If you guys can see how it goes all the way up to 6,500 RPM. So on the older models, it only goes to that 50, and then you have these ones that go to that 60 mark. And then that's really the only difference. I think the only other difference is, again, the trip, the way the trip operates. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Also too, on the tachometer, see that V6? Well, that V6, I guess, never lit up on all the models. So there actually is a guy that I found who shows you how to do that. He has a YouTube video, and the YouTube video is like a minute long or something like that. But he basically was annoyed enough that he wanted to get that to work, and he shows you how to do it. So what he did was took like a little two little small crimpers or alligator clamps, and stuck a wire to them and found out what connections go where, and then lit that thing up. So what I did is on the back here, I found where the connections were, and then I soldered those two together. And then when I lit it up, that little V6 also lit up. And again, I don't know why from the factory that wasn't, maybe that was just something that was missed in the whole schematic scheme, or however they started to kind of make these dashes. But it does light up, so now mine lights up. And this V6 never probably lit up before in its lifetime, and then now I got it to light up. So other than that, y'all, I mean, that's pretty much it. So what I'll do is I'll put this kind of somewhat back together, then I'll show you guys kind of what it looks like. All right, y'all, so I got it all together here, and this is kind of what it looks like. So when I actually put it in the car, I'm gonna have to modify this. I'm gonna have to cut these off. From what I've read, you won't have any room to kind of keep those. I think this here is pretty much the exact dimensions of what I will need to do to kind of make it work inside of my car. On my Regal, I have two little columns here that have like, you know, blinkers and like seat belt light and all that kind of stuff. All of that on this one is displayed here. And I think on this side on my Regal is like security light, service engine light soon, and all those as well. Again, those are kind of just right here. And also too, when you put the key in the car on the Regal, there's a security light that flashes on. What I saw one guy did is actually there's a shift light on here where it says shift, and then there's an arrow up. I'm not exactly sure what it was for. Maybe it was for a manual or something like that, and then it tells you kind of when to shift if it got up to a certain RPM or something like that. However, he used the shift as a security light. So when you put the key in, it just started to blink. And on this one, it has service engine soon, seat belt light, brake for your parking brake, anti-lock, ABS, brights, as a shift light. I'm not sure what that is, maybe headlights or something like that. Check fluid, and then your hazards. This here too, I will probably have to eliminate. This is resetting the trip. This goes from kilometers to miles, depending on how you want to read it. And this is to reset. This is to reset, I think, the trip. And I don't think I'll be able to use that unless I made some modifications to my dash or bezel. So we'll see. I'm gonna take it out for now and then figure it out a little later on. Probably some things that I won't really ever need to use, but I don't know, we'll see. Other than that, everything is pretty self-explanatory. A little bit of wiring to kind of make this work in the car, and some other things that I had to pick up to make it work. One other thing I still have to pick up as well. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let me go ahead and light this thing up so you guys can kind of see. Boom. So there she is, y'all. There she is. Woo-wee. Yes, I am loving it. And it's kind of cool because unfortunately I won't be able to reset the odometer. However, let me Oh shoot, I don't have two hands, y'all. So I was actually gonna reset the, actually, let me do this right here. I can do it with this hand. All right, so I just had to hit that trip button to take it from trip miles to actual odometer miles. And you can see it's kind of cool. So the chip in here stores the mileage. There's nothing that can be done, at least from what I found, about resetting the mileage. People just tend to leave that because it's a little bit more involved and no one's really has really figured out how to do it without, you know, really messing it up and all that. So people just tend to kind of leave the mileage there, but it shows you this particular car had 250,000 miles on it. So that's actually kind of interesting just to see that. But yeah, y'all, she all lit up here and everything is on. Again, this center section was not on before, but just by a simple fix of reflowing the power supply, I was able to make it work, and that's pretty awesome. Also, this is what I was talking about here. So where it says tachometer V6, that V6 never lit up. And now by doing that little slight modification, it's lit up. So what's kind of cool about it too is the Turbo Regal has a tach on the bottom that's just simply just a bunch of lines that light up from like yellow to red to orange to red or something like that. This here is kind of just a more detailed version of that. So that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. Oh, excuse me. Actually, it's a boost tach. So actually, I think it's kind of cool. This is kind of a little bit more in depth, and man, so 80s. It's kind of cool, man. Also, these turn signals are sequential. So they when you turn on the signal, it lights up from a small arrow to a bigger arrow to a bigger arrow. And you know, that's kind of cool. So really, man, they were kind of like almost ahead of their day back then. And you know, to think that these were just in the S10s and the S10 Blazers and the Oldsmobile Bravadas is kind of neat. So anyways, let me go ahead and shut this off here. Good. All right, so one other thing I was gonna talk about here, there's a couple different parts that you have to pick up in order to make this work. It's been suggested that you take the pigtail and the oil pressure sensor from the donor car. That way you can hook it up to yours. The coolant temp sensor and the pigtail as well, so that way you can also run that on your vehicle, as you will need that to tie into the dash. And you will also need a specific vehicle speed sensor buffer. So on these old school cars, they had a vehicle speed sensor that goes into the transmission, and then they also have a buffer that basically breaks down the miles per hour from the transmission in through the ECM, and then translates all that to the dash. So there's a few different ones that basically pulse at different rates, and the one that I have will not work. From what I've heard, people that have ran them on Turbo Regals, if you just hook it up like normal, then it'll only display half of the correct speed. So if you're going 60 miles an hour, it'll only say like 30 miles an hour. So with that being said, there is what they call a 4-out vehicle speed sensor buffer, and they only came in certain models of vehicles, and that's been the most challenging thing for me to find. And you can find them online, obviously used, but they're anywhere from 60 to 80 to over $100. And I think there's a certain one that you have to get. I know the ones that are needed for these particular swaps are ones from like a 90 to 92 Camaro. Also, I think around the same years of the Caprice, and also a few other models as well too. So I've been to a couple of junkyards with no luck, and luckily I found somebody on OfferUp, and I messaged him, and he said, because he is parting out a 1990 Camaro, and that's actually one of the years that I need that you can get one of those buffers out. And he says he's parted out a lot of the outside, but the inside is virtually untouched. So he's gonna actually look for that for me tomorrow or by this weekend. So hopefully I can score that from him for little to no money, and just go ahead and take that off his hands. So we shall see. But anyways, y'all, I don't want to make this video too long and drawn out, but these are the steps that I'm taking to make this work. And I think I'm gonna start it fairly soon here. So I have all my information that I need for the wiring, and man, we good to go. So stay tuned for more, y'all. There will be more on this swap, and I am very excited about it. I even think it looks I even think it looks real cool right here. You know, just simply looking at it, y'all, looking at it. So anyways, y'all, stay tuned for more. You guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, man, share, do all that good stuff. Stick with me. We got this, and I'm out. Deuces.